I work in medical products agency, and I have no Swedish Medical Products Agency, and I have no conflicts of interest. These are my opinions based on my observations, so they are not common opinions of the agency. So the aim of clinical drug development is to find. Okay. Welcome. With the aim of clinical drug development, a large amount of data has to be collected in order to find a dose range and dose schedule that is safe and efficacious for benefit risk, for an acceptable benefit risk. It has to be defined which particular subjects might benefit from the treatment and specific indication for the use of the drug. There are usually requirements that have to be respected, such as good clinical practice, Declaration of Helsinki, and trials have to be designed and conducted accordingly, and scientific principles have to be respected too. And very important issue, the collection and reporting of the adverse events. So what do the regulatory do? And what is the ground for regulatory decision? Our decisions are based purely on scientific data. I have to say that. So we don't have any concerns for the cost effectiveness of the drug when we are assessing the data. So we don't care about the price when we are going through the data. This I will show what we are going through soon. We just look at the scientific data. So the price is afterwards negotiated by other authorities in our country. I think this is very important because the assessment of risk-benefit has to be objective as possible based on scientific data. So hopefully when positive benefit-risk balance is shown, so the drug gets approval. I will not go into other parts of assessment, but only into clinical assessment because that's what I do. In clinical assessment, we have apart from clinical pharmacology in terms of pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. And clinical efficacy, clinical safety, pharmacovigilance, and drug information in terms of summary of product characteristics and patient leaflets are also evaluated before the drug is approved. So here you can see part pyramid. What's that? So here you can see it like an iceberg because it's a large amount of data. Now, luckily, the submissions are done electronically, so no paper is used, as they used to do in the older days. I heard from my older colleagues when the approval dossier used to come to the authority, they used to use tracks of papers. So now it's electronically done. Actually, we are saving a lot of forest, which I really care about. Okay, when we are evaluating efficacy, of course, the dose finding is the first question. There has to be an appropriate starting dose and a titration schedule. And the dose range have to be defined. You have to know your maximum dose. You have to know your minimum effective dose, of course. And if there are any differences between age groups, gender groups, different races and related to genetic issues, it all has to be detailed. Evidence of effect is very important. For this, all studies count. Not only main studies, but also confirmatory, phase 2, 3, phase 1, all preclinical studies. So we look, of course, at the relevant endpoints, the primary, the secondary, study design and scales. They are all important. They are all done through really in detail. Study populations are very important because in the end they will be, the definition will be ground for claimed indication. The data has to be generalizable for larger population when the drug comes to the clinic. Maybe I can give an example here. Recently we have approved Trevicta. It's the 3 months depot version of paliperidone. You are discussing a lot in this meeting the 1 month version, except now we approved actually the 3 month version. And there they performed their studies in a certain patient group. Patients were stabilized on paliperidone palmitate 1 month depot formulation for 4 months, and then they started with this 3 month formulation. But when we look at the data, we decided, we were very convinced that you don't have to wait for 4 months before you introduce Trevicta, the 3 month depot formulation. So we suggested that, okay, maybe you don't have to wait, you should change the indication text. So not always the indication text is exactly defining this, the clinical population, or clinical patient population. There are some differences. You really have to go through the data. But anyway, the population studied have to be relevant anyway for the patients that will use the drug. We do require some comparator data. We have to have them somehow, but it's not always the case that we receive them. Some dossiers have short-term studies only with comparator, and some dossiers have superiority and non-inferiority studies. So superiority is preferable before the drug is approved, but in some cases non-inferiority studies are also acceptable as pivotal studies, for example. Such cases can be that the drug candidate has certain advantages in terms of safety, in terms of pharmacokinetics or pharmaceutical form. For example, if we look at the Xeplion and Trevicta, they had non-inferiority studies. They did not show superiority, they showed non-inferiority, and they have received approval with that because they have pharmaceutical advantages. They have this depot formulation, so that it is believed that it introduces a certain advantage over the oral paliperidone, for example, or the oral other available drugs. We have discussed clinical relevance of effect this morning. So not always the statistical significance is translated as a clinically significant effect. That is always a discussion. What does this effect mean? So sometimes we approve drugs with modest efficacy due to their safety profile. Sometimes the drug candidates have advantages in terms of safety or pharmaceutical formulation. So effect size is important, yes, but sometimes other aspects can weigh heavier. Other efficacy parameters can be patient's compliance and preference, and quality of life and patient's functioning, occupational functioning or educational functioning, etc. But these are generally secondary or tertiary endpoints. For safety, we, as clinical assessors, we have to be aware of the preclinical safety findings because they do mean something for us. They have to be addressed by the clinical data. We generally require clinical data corresponding to identified preclinical safety concerns. Exposure in terms of pharmacokinetics and corresponding pharmacodynamics is important data for us. Recently we have been going through drug candidate for schizophrenia. There we have received pharmacokinetic simulations as well as pharmacodynamic simulations. That was an interesting example for us because the drug had mainly D2, had the main mechanism of action over D2 occupancy, and D2 occupancy is very well known for schizophrenia, anti-schizophrenic effect. So that was an interesting example. I haven't seen PD modeling before in that way. Serious adverse events, that's withdrawals due to adverse events, are very valuable data for us because based on these data we might require additional safety data. The potential divergent use or off-label use have to be discussed and detailed. Especially the potential addiction potential or misuse potential have to be detailed. In psychiatry, this is important for us. And another aspect is what is not known about safety. The known data we can handle, but unknown data is very difficult. Uncertainties are very difficult to handle. So there are a lot of discussions. Risks for the standard of care. As I said, as well as for efficacy, comparison has to be done for safety as well. So sometimes safety is the advantage of the new drug candidate. The pharmacovigilance used to be almost completely in the responsibility of PRAC, this Pharmacovigilant Risk Assessment Committee. But nowadays PRAC and CHMP, the Committee for Human Medicinal Products, try to collaborate a little bit more. So they are sharing the safety concerns, meaning important identified risks and potential identified risks and missing information. These safety concerns are now owned by CHMP. So PRAC and CHMP, two committees that used to work very separately from each other, now try to collaborate even more. That's really good for us and for the drug companies. So we have to go through risk minimization measures, risk management plans. Post-approval studies, we have to discuss whether or not it is required. It's very common that they are required nowadays. Last 3-4 years we have been very busy with ADHD. A lot of products have been approved for children, and then long-term safety concerns are raised. So we had to require a lot of post-approval safety studies and drug utilization studies, and these are post-approval efficacy studies. So there are a lot of commitments going on. Sometimes we require educational material for prescribers as well as for patients. So I guess it was for agomelatine and liver toxicity. I went through educational material. It's really detailed for a patient. So if the physician forgets to require liver tests, patient has to remind their physician. So I thought it was really interesting which responsibility we give to patients. And some periodic safety assessments, referrals, withdrawal license questions are also performed by the regulatory. All of this information I went through very quickly is condensed to summary of product characteristics and patient leaflets. So summary of product characteristics include a lot of medical terms. It's generally for the prescribers. On the other hand, patient leaflets are almost a translation of it to normal language, normal. Our public assessment reports that are based for the decision making are publicly available. I will show, but those are the ones for centralized procedure. So those are the drugs that are approved in the whole Europe. But otherwise, you may also find other assessment reports, a little bit more condensed, for mutual recognition and decentralized procedure. So this is not for the whole Europe, but for certain countries that are included in the procedure. So I wanted to show an example. I keep saying that you can find it, but I thought we would go through together. So this is Emma's website. You go in and then you choose find medicine. And then you go to human medicines, because there are also veterinary. Then you find your, you browse by therapeutic area. At least I did that way. So, and then you choose your field. In this case, it's psychiatry, mental disorders, and I choose schizophrenia, for example. And then comes a list of products here, and substances, and date of authorization. So you can find that information, and these are clickable. So this is, for example, what you get first, in the first click. Here you have some summary, and a bar already, and this is for public. But if you go to, for example, assessment history, I copied the whole list here. So what you see here is the all assessment reports, including the variations. So if there has been any difference in terms of indication, safety, or whatsoever, even the assessment reports for those procedures can be found here. So if you want to follow the drug, so you can see it with the whole reports. So anybody who's interested in Invega, for example, can find it. That was that. That was the approval history. So I wanted to summarize a little bit how the rational drug use is treated in Sweden. We, as Medical Product Agency, as a regulatory agency, publish treatment recommendations based on literature as well as the data we receive, all data we can find. And then there is a national board of health and welfare called Socialstyrelsen. So they also publish guidelines, but those are for the whole healthcare system, also for different therapeutic areas and so on. They resemble our treatment recommendations, hopefully. There can be some differences. Then, the pricing and subsidizing is taken care of by the Dental and Pharmaceutical Benefits Agency. There is a different agency for pricing and subsidizing. And another agency is reviewing the data. It's the Swedish Agency for Health Technology Assessment of Social Services, SBU. And then it all comes to the WISE list. I think you also have WISE lists in Turkey. So there are 20 county councils in Sweden. It's like regions in Turkey, I can say, more or less. But they are smaller, of course. And they have their county councils. County councils have their own economy, so they have their own. Partly, I can say that they have their autonomy as well, but not very much. But economically, they have their economy. So they prepare their WISE lists. I copied. I found the English translation for a WISE list of Stockholm County Council and copied schizophrenia recommendation. For rational drug use. You can see the list. I don't know how it is in Turkey, maybe you can compare. But this list, WISE list in PDF format, is available in this, So, it's available in this website. It's called Kloka listan, the WISE list. So, you can go and compare if you want your WISE list with their WISE list. Physicians are, I'm promised that I will say this, physicians are a little bit responsible of their prescriptions because the departments have a certain economy. So the cost of the prescription is important for the department they are working in. So the economy is steering, the prescription. But not from the beginning in terms of approval. In the end, the price is important, and so on. So I don't work in that field, so I cannot tell you more about it. It's a puzzle. I want to say good prescribing is not simply matching the disease and the drug. So there are more to that. It's getting more and more complicated, but hopefully the regulatory agencies may help and guide. Thank you for your patience.